Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and we are continuing with our series that we brought back from the podcast over here to YouTube to What Have We Been Watching? And this week, I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff. But before we dive into that, if you are new here, consider subscribing, dropping a like, a comment down below what you have been watching, because we have new content on this channel each and every day. And sometimes the stuff that we have in the What Are We Were Watching may be missing something because we have a full review on it, like we will have with Killers of the Flower Moon here in the next week.
Now, we have quite a few films to talk about this week that we've been watching. Right now, I'm a festival programmer. I program for the Forest City Film Festival in Canada, and this is our festival week. So most of the films that I'm watching at this point, I'm rewatching stuff that I saw months ago, and just getting a fresh take on some of these films that I picked for this festival. So the first thing I watched this week, not the first thing, because this is very out of order, but the first thing I'll talk about that I watched this week, I rewatched Fallen Leaves, the Aki Kaurismäki movie. It was one of the Cannes selections this year. It is a romantic comedy. Comedy might be stretching it because it's very, very deadpan. It's like, if you think of Wes Anderson and you take it to the max, like the humorlessness of the characters and how every line that they deliver is delivered with a stoic expression like this. It's somewhere between like Yorgos Lanthimos and Wes Anderson. I'm not talking like Poor Things or The Favorite. I'm talking like The Lobster, like that type of deadpan. Yeah. So it's that level of stuff. And honestly, I rewatched it this week before it screens at the festival because I didn't really appreciate this film as much as I feel like I maybe should have on a first watch. So it was a bit of a late addition to the festival. And honestly, I did appreciate it a little bit more on a rewatch. I found much more of the humor in there. I think that the choices in production design and music are aesthetically really pleasing. You know, it's a good movie, but it's not one that personally resonates with me as much as some of this guy's other work.
And to follow that up, I guess we should talk about a movie that we both saw this past week, and that is arguably the biggest movie in the world currently, Taylor Swift ERAS. It has finally hit theaters, and you know, I don't really feel like there's that much to talk about. It's a concert, doc. It's watching a recorded version of a concert. I thought it was a lot of fun for someone who did not get to go to the show. It felt very, like, there was times where I think the sound design is the highlight of this movie, where you feel engrossed into it. Like, you couldn't tell, at least for me, like, if it was my theater people singing along, cheering along, or if it was the audience there at the concert at SoFi Stadium. Just my issue with concert films, and we talked about this before, is just I really don't like how they're edited. It's so fast-paced where you can't really get a scene of what the dancers are like on stage. You don't get to see close-ups of Taylor for very long at a time, or you just cut to some random angle where, like, no, stay with this solo shot. I forgot what song it was, but I think it was during the acoustic session where they just stayed with her the whole song. It's like, yes, that's what I want for some of these slower songs, instead of cutting from wide shot, side shot, close shot, up shot, left, right. Like, during like Folklore, there was like 2 or 3 songs where she was inside the little cabin, and it just kept cutting away from her. I'm like, nothing else is going on stage. We don't need to see a wide shot of like an empty stage and just her little small in the background. You need to stay close up to her so we can see the emotion on her face and just her amazing talent.
I really liked ERAS, honestly. I mean, I would call myself a Taylor Swift fan, but I wouldn't call myself a Swiftie. You know, I would say that I love some of her music, and some of it I'm kind of indifferent towards. Personally, I think Folklore is one of the best pop albums the last 10 years. That is one of my favorite pieces of music ever, and I think it comes from a very special place because, you know, it feels like one of the definitive pieces of pandemic art. So I love Folklore. The rest of Taylor's stuff, you know, she's got some hits here and there, but nothing has hit me the way that Folklore did. Anyways, for this movie, I had a great time. I mean, this is clearly one of the most well-crafted stage shows that has ever been put on. Like, the scope of some of this stuff is insane. It's a 3-hour nonstop show. The amount of energy that it would take to do that performance for Taylor, oh my God, how the hell do you keep that up? And not just that, but like the level of stagecraft that's there. It feels like a production much similar to Cirque du Soleil or like an opera rather than a traditional concert. Like they are putting money into every moment of this with the giant LED wall, the way that they bring in actual sets for multiple parts, like in the lover section, having the scaffolding that's like the office building there. Incredible. Bringing in total darkness, you do not see these transitions, but bringing in the folklore cabin, all of those different things. It's so clever how they do it, and there's clearly such artistry that's going into the production of this. As for the film, I would agree with you that sometimes the editing might be a little bit too much, but what I think this movie does well, any concert film, I think, should not just capture the concert or the experience of the concert. The concert film should do its best job of capturing who that artist is. And that doesn't just mean like telling us about them or showing the show. It means how it's filmed should reflect what this person's persona is. And with Taylor is the largest star in the world right now. You know, that's what this movie is. It is, it's not just a concert doc showing what this performance is like. It is capturing in this moment what Taylor Swift means to so many people, which is she is an icon.
Well, you talked about how Folklore is your favorite Taylor Swift project, and it's one of my favorites as well. But what I very much appreciate about ERAS is how some of my least favorite Taylor Swift albums were, I think, the highlights of this movie. I am through and through a Reputation hater. I think that is her worst album by far.
Am I.
But
Yep,
that was
bad.
the best section of this entire movie to me.
Oh, Dylan, I disagree.
That section had so much energy, had so much life. In my theater, I was in basically a sold-out IMAX screening, and the crowd erupted during that section, and you could feel the energy, the vibe from all around, as well as what was radiating off the screen. The visuals from the stage looking snake-like to the LED screens that you talked about, the costumes in that section, as well as just the collection of songs and the way they were ordered. I did think it was a little funny during Look What You Made Me Do, which is, oh, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now, and immediately goes into old Taylor after that song was a little funny. But other than that, I thought the Reputation section was one of my highlights. And coming from me, that is a huge, huge statement. But I also, one thing I would say to give another criticism to this movie, and I don't think it's the movie's fault, it's just me as someone who loves to go to concerts, notice this performance isn't really made for people in the venue. At least the way it was filmed and the way they were staging made it very much seem like it's made for people to watch at home or people to watch on the video screens behind Taylor. I got a sense, especially during Folklore and Evermore, almost everything going on was on the main stage. And if your main stage is here and you have a catwalk that comes all the way back here, the people at the edge of the catwalk and back cannot see anything that's going on the main stage without the arrangement of songs. Taylor, as you said, is a massive star. She has so many things that getting every song you want on screen is going to be a little hard. Fitting them into one concert is going to be a little hard, but I felt like the way all of the eras kind of flew into each other, you went from high energy to more personable, back to bold in your face, into something more artistic. And I think the costume selection, for the most part, there was one I really didn't like, but everything else I very much enjoyed of her costume and the backup dancers or singers' costumes. I thought the energy is something I think is very important for, let alone an in-person concert, but especially for a recorded concert, because I have been to some concerts that I love, and I see a recorded version, like, this isn't as cool watching from home. But this one I feel like is equally as cool watching from a movie theater, and I'm sure will still be fun watching at home.
I really wish that I had a fun audience with this. I know when I was talking beforehand and saying, like, I don't know if I want to go when all the Swifties are out. And then I didn't go when all the Swifties were out. I went to one of the Thursday screenings, which were added at the last minute. I was in a tiny theater, and I was like, it'll just be me in the movie. That'll be nice. No, I wish that I went and saw it with a crowd of freaking lunatics dancing and screaming.
We didn't have the dancing. We just had the screaming.
Ah, okay. I would have loved I think just the screaming would have bugged me. But if there was dancing, I would have been like, this is cool. This is fun. This is part of the experience, you know? Because for me, I would, if there was no dancing but just screaming, I'd be like, just listen to the movie.
At least to me, the dancing is what would take me out of it because it's people around me and my eyes are not going to the screen. It's going to what's around me. It's the same way when people on their phones or people are like moving around in their seats. But if you're like yelling, like, oh my gosh, Taylor's on screen, or you're singing along, I can get into that because it, I think, goes into my earlier statement, the sound design, where I couldn't tell, was it the people around me or was it the actual concert itself?
I think it would have been fun having people dancing in this. You know, like when I saw Stop Making Sense, the people in front of me were just like jamming the hell out the whole time. That was fun. You know, was it distracting? Yes. But did it heighten the experience because people were having such a blast? Yes, it did. And that's how I feel about ERAS too. I really wish I got that experience. And I was very silly not going for that experience.
Overall, though, ERAS was a blast. It's something that I could see myself watching again, but it's not something I see myself rushing on again. Again, like you, I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan, but I like the majority of her music. It's just like, I'm not going to rush out to see a concert movie 2, 3, 4 times in the 3 weeks, 4 weeks is out in theaters. But I'll be very interested to see, how does this play watching at home? Like, is it still as fun by yourself or with a small group compared to being in a packed theater or just watching the biggest screen and the biggest sound system possible? But overall, thought it was a great experience, and I am very excited to see how future concert movies look. Will Renaissance look the same? Will it have the same feel? And what other artists will follow in Taylor and Beyonce's footsteps and put their concerts to the big screen?
Yeah, I will say I don't think Beyonce's is going to be as big as Taylor's is. Genuinely, I think her fans are rabid in a way that I don't think Beyonce's are at this point.
That's completely fair. I think it really depends on where you'll be at, the demographics, all that stuff. I think Taylor has a more younger skewing fan base, but I still think Beyonce's is more wider range from younger to older, but still usually with, as we've seen, movies and social media are more dominant towards those younger audiences. But speaking of something that isn't as young, a little bit older, you saw an oldie, but a goodie in JFK.
I did. I saw Oliver Stone's 1991 JFK movie. Have you seen this one, Dylan?
I have not, but I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Okay, well, I'll give you some bad things as well as some good things.
Okay.
To start off, let me just say, I think this movie is a masterpiece in so many ways. It is an incredible political thriller that follows the people trying to prove that JFK's assassination was a conspiracy. Now, the problem with that is that on one hand, while this is masterfully done as a film, it is entertaining, the structure is brilliant, the editing, the cinematography, the music, all of it is just gorgeous. The ensemble is just firing on all cylinders. Everything about this movie is so well done. And the trouble here, which is keeping me from saying that this is an instant favorite, is that it presents everything it's saying as fact. And it brings to mind some really interesting questions for me of what is a filmmaker's responsibility to tell the truth? Because in a way, what this movie alleges, it presents itself as a piece of history, that this is a historical document, this is what happened, this is what really happened, and they're all hiding it from you. And in a way, like, that level of conspiracy presented with this level of sincerity and earnestness, it feels a little bit dangerous. You know, and all to say, I mean, having an opinion about, you know, what you think really went down with this, that's one thing. But presenting it as these are the facts, when these are in fact not the facts, a lot of these are very, very tenuous opinions or things that have been disproven or things that might be a little bit shaky. It's all presented as just concrete evidence and concrete information. And I say, you know, what is a filmmaker's responsibility to tell the truth? And I think the most troubling thing about the movie is that it doesn't feel like Oliver Stone's not telling the truth. It feels like he genuinely believes every single thing that he's saying in this. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of it is misinformation. A lot of it are things that have been disproven. And it does not give, not both sides, but it doesn't give the counterpoint as to why these things might not actually be true. And in that way, I think it's quite an irresponsible movie. I wouldn't call it a dangerous movie, but it is a fascinating document because it's very rare that we see a movie that is as well made as this, that simultaneously kind of feels like the ravings of a lunatic.
Interesting. Okay. JFK, the ravings of a lunatic. Got it. On the flip side of that, I saw a movie that was also based on something real, but they made sure during the credits to say stuff was heightened because movies, dramatization, all that type of stuff. But if you like, somewhat comedic, somewhat dramatized courtroom trials movies that have a great Jamie Foxx movie, I saw The Burial, and it's right up your alley. I think this is one of Jamie Foxx's best roles he's had in the last few years. I would go back to Just Mercy, but other than Just Mercy, you have to go back a little bit further. He gets to shine in both comedic and drama scenes. This film's not a tech giant. It's not doing anything very impressive behind the camera, but there's one specific scene later in the movie with Jamie Foxx, and they just stay on him. They don't cut away. They don't move the camera. The camera's placed down as if you're the judge, and it just lets you sit there for a minute, maybe it's two, and Jamie Foxx will give a monologue. And this scene, I think, very much is the highlight of the movie. It just shows how good of an actor Jamie Foxx can be when given the right material. Overall, the rest of the movie, it's fine. It's nothing like new, but it's also just a pretty fun time to put on. It's a little bit long. It's 2 hours. It drags a little bit. It feels like it has multiple different endings. But overall, I feel like it's really worth 2 hours if you have it. It's on Amazon Prime. I think it's out now. It's a good, fun little time.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Jamie Foxx is competitive for Golden Globes?
Golden Globes with 6, I would say so. Technically.
And it is a comedy, right?
It's like half comedy, half drama. If Babylon counts as a comedy, this would count as a comedy sort of thing.
Okay.
I would say the story's not about him. He's a supporting person in Tommy Lee Jones's story. But he has more screen time, and he pushes the story along. While it's about Tommy Lee Jones fighting this case, Jamie Foxx's character is who you're kind of tracking with during this case. Comedy musical actor at the Globe has 6 spots, and if you look down there, the 6th spot is kind of open. Could be him, could be Timothy Chalamet, could be some other people. I think if Amazon tries, SAG strike ends, he's out there to campaign, I think he's in. I think without the strike ending and without Amazon putting force behind him, he's probably out, just because they also have Matt Damon. They also have Jeffrey Wright in this category. So can they get 3 actors in? That might be a stretch, but it's the Globes. He's a big name. If he can be out there, I don't really see why they wouldn't at least consider it.
Okay, interesting, because, that's more consideration than I think I've given him in the past. So I'm glad to hear that you think he might actually be something, and that makes me excited to actually see the movie. But a film that I did see this week was Michael Haneke's film The Piano Teacher, starring Isabelle Huppert and Benoît Magimel. This is a film that is widely regarded as a classic, specifically in Michael Haneke's filmography. He is the guy that made Amour, he made Funny Games, he made The White Ribbon, films that are widely seen as classics of sadistic, very depressing cinema. Films that are almost torturous for the viewer to watch because they are about pain and suffering. And The Piano Teacher is really a little different, I'd say. It's not really about suffering for the most part until a certain point, and then it really is. But it's a film about repression. And it's a character study of someone who is incredibly sexually repressed. And it's a story about that shame and about that repression and how that repression comes to the surface and what happens at that point. It's very dark. It is not an easy watch, and it leaves you feeling pretty damn defeated by the end. Now, I didn't love this film as much as some people do. This was a big Cannes winner when it first came out in 2001. A lot of people say this is one of Isabelle Huppert's best performances of all time. I liked the movie, but for me, I'm going to say it's like a weak 8 out of 10. When a lot of people would call this just a straight up 5 out of 5, they would call this like one of the greatest films of all time.
On the flip side, I watched 2 stinkers this week. I watched Expendables or Expend4balls. Honestly, I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. It feels like a B movie in every way possible. It feels like it's making fun of itself, but it's totally for real in what it's trying to do. I think the best way to sum this movie up is there is a scene on a boat in the third act of this movie. Keep in mind, 50 Cent is a character in this movie.
Oh, God.
They are listening to PIMP and singing along to it. Like 50 Cent isn't the one who is singing the song, and his voice sounds identical to it. And they just act like, oh, it's just a song in this universe that they know. Expendables 4, it's not worth your time. It's not even like fun.
Oh my God.
It's just bad. There may be one like so cringe it's good scene, but it lasts about 30 seconds where once this movie hits whatever streaming service it's going to, you could just look it up itself. It involves Jason Statham's character and a social media influencer. Other than that, this movie has nothing really redeemable going for it. Then also on Friday the 13th, because spooky movies, it's time for spooky season. I did not pick this movie, but someone else was like, oh, we're scrolling Netflix, let's watch The Wretched. Could I tell you what The Wretched is about? Not really. But it was so boring and so confusing, not really scary, and almost every actor, and it was very like wooden and like you didn't seem like any of these people were acting, which maybe that's just a typical Netflix horror movie that comes out every year, but that's the one that was picked. So I had 2 stinkers this week. I have one more positive to get to later, but Matt, it is now back to you.
But I got to rewatch Orlando, My Political Biography, which is an experimental documentary. It's coming out in theaters in just a little bit. This is one of the films that I programmed at my film festival, and I was so happy to rewatch this. And I loved it even more than I loved it when I first saw it. This is a radical documentary about transness, looking at trans rights and basically trans theory through the lens of Orlando, which was a book written in 1928 by Virginia Woolf. And the story of Orlando follows an Elizabethan man who is in the court of the queen, and he's a poet. And one day he wakes up in a woman's body, and that's halfway through the novel, and the rest of the book, she is Lady Orlando, and she lives for 400 years, and it is just a story of this person who randomly changes genders. And this movie frickin' blew me away again, even more than the first time. I think it's a really dense film. It's going to be on the Criterion Collection eventually, guaranteed, because Janus owns the rights to it. But it's the type of film that I think demands multiple viewings. And when it does release on that Criterion Blu-ray, I think owning it and watching it multiple times is really going to be the best way to crack into what this movie is actually saying, because there's so much going on here. It kind of revels in confusing the audience, of just slamming so much information at you at one time. It's genuinely one of the most interesting films that I've seen in a very long time. And I would give this one a 9 out of 10. I thought it was great.
Well, to close us out here, I think it's all safe to say it's better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime, because I finally saw The King of Comedy, one of Martin Scorsese's most interesting movies, I think. I think it's a lot different from a lot of the other ones I have seen. As I said in our Scorsese draft that came out the other day, I think this is one of my favorite Robert De Niro performances. I think he shines as a self-obsessed, egotistical maniac that is Rupert Pumpkin. And I think this character is just so interesting, so wacky, so crazy. And it's nice to see him on the opposite side of the situation than where he was in Joker, the Todd Phillips movie from a few years ago. But overall, I really dug this. I definitely see the vibes that end up inspiring Joker, but I feel like both movies really stand by themselves. I think you could watch this and watch Joker and never really be like, oh yeah, these movies are so similar, because I think they both do what they do very well in different angles of this perception of this type of person. And again, mentioned this in our Scorsese draft, so definitely go check that out. But I think the biggest plot twist of this movie was the fact that he was actually funny at the end of the day. Because like with Joker, it's like, oh, he's not, it's all in his head. He's not this, he's not that. While here, he actually is. It's just he's insane the rest of the time. He can't figure out how to do it normally. But De Niro, he's great in this. Jerry Lewis gets to play basically himself, and I think he gives a very interesting take of the character. He's not always the funny man. Kind of is like a peek behind the curtain, be like, well, maybe I'm funny on TV, but my life has other stuff that goes into it, and I have to deal with crazy obsessive fans. And I think that his character has a great arc throughout, and he gets to give a not just a comedic, but a very well drama performance.
Now, what are you looking forward to in the next week? What are you planning to watch?
Well, I mean, we have Killers of the Flower Moon coming up the next time we'll have one of these
baby.
out. So that is going to be super exciting. I'm not going to be able to see it until the Monday after it comes out. So I have to wait Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I have to wait 4 days. I've seen people say, this is amazing, this is great. And I just have to be like, I see it soon. But I get to go to a Q&A screening of Blackberry. And I think at the time of recording this, tomorrow, which I know you are pumped to hear my reaction for. I'm very excited. I'm glad I've put off watching this movie until now, because now we get to see it in a very interesting and cool sort of way, because I have my film festival coming up soon, but obviously the SAG strike, actors can't be there because this is a small movie. An actor can be there, so it'll be nice.
Oh yeah, my film festival's going on right now, so in the next week, I'm going to be able to rewatch some of my favorite films of this year, including Hundreds of Beavers, The Taste of Things, Monster, The Settlers, How to Have Sex, and many, many other films that I'm really excited to give a second watch to. Of course, also Killers of the Flower Moon, which I also will have to wait till Monday to see. And then I think I'm going to try, in my spare time, I'm going to try to watch Scorsese's Cape Fear.
That would be fun. If I have spare time, I'm going to try to do it after hours. So we'll both have a little extra Scorsese tick mark before. We have our tier list coming up next week. So once again, if you are new here, drop a subscription because we have so much Scorsese content coming on the next week.
Yes, and as always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.